Can you hear me clearly? You hear me fine? How are you? Fine? First of all, I would like to thank the Estonian Research Council for having invited me here to Tallinn to this important two-day capacity building conference. It's my first visit to Estonia, so I hope to come back some later stage and see more both of Tallinn and the rest of the country. A little bit about myself before I start my presentation. As stated, my main occupation is a senior legal advisor at the university, but I also have a part-time employment as a legal advisor at the regional hospital, and I work part-time as general counsel for a small life science company. So I have sort of one foot in the public sphere and one foot in the private sphere. I've been working with international contracts for about 30 years in practice, both in the private sector and in the public sector, and intensively the IP questions, both practical, direct project-related IP, but also on the strategic level, since I started at the university back in 1997. Until March this year, I was a member of a European group of experts called the Knowledge Transfer Stakeholder Forum that was established by the European Commission. It was part of the FP7 framework program. And many of the issues that I will raise here today is actually taken from the discussions we had within that expert group. So this is a quote by a Norwegian rector in Oslo called Kurt Rice. He was interviewed by a Norwegian newspaper this spring, actually before he became rector. And the context of this quote was that he was asked about student quality. Now, what is actually knowledge? There's no universally accepted definition of knowledge. However, there are some recognized knowledge carriers. We talk about knowledge that are codified in papers, in written works, or in mathematics as one group. A second group is knowledge as internalized by people through experience, studies, and work, which is, in my opinion, often an underestimated knowledge carrier. And then a third knowledge carrier is knowledge as embedded in different kinds of technology, like software programs, machinery, etc. Now, why is it important to start this discussion with having some views on what knowledge is actually about? What the rector here meant to signal was that information is not knowledge. In today's world, we are basically drowned with information from all kinds of sources of different value, and the necessity to sort out the information and make information your own knowledge, internalize it, as they call in psychology, is essential for actually grasping the knowledge society. So people have to internalize knowledge. Now, how do you normally internalize knowledge? You internalize knowledge by working together in a collaborative setting. For instance, in a collaborative R&D project. So there's something that you cannot transfer by the formal transfer mechanisms. Did I hear a clear yes to this question from anybody? No. No? Now, the reason for asking this question is because I want to focus two issues under this. First, if you look at the world at large, English is the dominating language when it comes to knowledge transfer and intellectual property. One can like it or dislike it, but that's the way it is. And there are no signals that it's going to change in the foreseeable future. This is a fact of life, you can say. So what does that mean? What does that imply? That means that if you want to be an active part in transnational knowledge transfer today or in the future, you basically have to have some proficiency in the English language. But that is not enough, because as very well illustrated by the discussions yesterday, within innovation management, intellectual property, there are field-specific terms that are essential to understanding what these fields are actually about. One term that we used some time defining and discussing yesterday was what is a business secret. That was discussed according to Estonian law, but you know, business secrets are regulated under different jurisdiction and interpreted differently in different countries. So it's not a uniform concept or a uniform term. Just as an example, there's been discussion about taking part in framework programs projects. Like today we have Horizon 2020. Within Horizon 2020 you have many very important defined terms, both in the rules of participation, which is the legal top sort of regulation that controls the whole framework program, but also in the model grant agreement you have specific terms and specific definitions with a specific content. So the European Commission has been one of the stakeholders in Europe trying to standardize terms in these fields. And then again, we have the third level. There was a presentation about the DESCA consortium agreement yesterday. Now, when we sat down in 2006 to make the DESCA consortium agreement, one of the first things we discussed in the IPR working group was, do we need some more terms and definitions to clarify what the stakeholders are actually going to do in these projects? And we came up with one new term that was not defined by the European Commission, and that was the term needed. Because as some of you are well aware of, it's for access rights, which are licenses and user rights to results and to background, it should be based on need. You are not allowed to have access unless you have a need. So what is needed? So we introduced the definition of needed in this model consortium agreement. Now, just as an illustration of how things work in practice, the other existing 4 model consortium agreements that was mentioned yesterday have a different definition of the same term. Just to complicate. So what you need actually is to internalize these specific terms as well if you want to be a major stakeholder in transnational knowledge transfer, which is. Now, I also want to mention WIPO. WIPO has been and is a very important stakeholder when it comes to establishing common terms in the fields of IP. Done tremendous work in that field. If any of you are interested in this in the details, have you been working with term standardization in some level in Estonia? Or now, there is also important work going on in standardization bodies, like the International Standardization Organization, ISO, and in Europe, the CEN-CENELEC standardization bodies have also produced interesting papers and positions on standardization of innovation management and standardization of terms related to intellectual property. There's one interesting project now going in a technical committee under ISO called ISO TC 279, I think, led by a French woman. And one of the work packages, work package 2, is convened by a Norwegian, and that is all about terminology. So terminology is key. So it's not only, but that's important. So standardization, as Carl Klingsheim very pointed out yesterday, is a key to have a competitive advantage when it comes to technological development, but you also have to look into the standardization that goes on when it comes to innovation management and intellectual property rights, which are becoming increasingly important. Tacit knowledge. Do you know what that is? Anybody? Now that is the knowledge that is not easy to transfer to another person by way of writing or drawing. It was actually introduced by a Hungarian called Michael Poliani, I think back in 1958 in psychology, and he produced then a a paper later on where he had the sort of summing up of his position was that you can know more than you can tell. And when we think about that for a moment, we all know that's true, because we have experiences, perhaps especially from childhood, that reminds us there's so much more to knowledge than just what is written down. You know, anybody of you, when you were a kid, had this kind of making a rabbit's head, you know, moving their ears when you sort of have the lighting, and you can, I don't know if you can do that now. Yeah, this kind of stuff. Remember that? How did you convey that knowledge to others, right? I learned it from my older cousin when we were actually on vacation in Easter holidays in the cabin, and the cabin didn't have electricity. So there was this, what do you call it, kerosene lamps, and we was, just before going to sleep, we was making different animal shapes on the wall. This is tacit knowledge. And my, one of my most important statements today, I hope you'll bring that with you as an outcome of this, is that the interplay between the tacit knowledge and the explicit knowledge is key to making new knowledge and new innovation. And then, and this is to the funding bodies amongst you, then you know that's actually about how do you construct research projects? How are they, what are the elements? How do, you know, companies and universities actually collaborate within a specific setting? Does it promote this kind of knowledge exchange? Or does it, in fact, make it more difficult? Something to think about. Yeah, this I'm sure that many of you recognize as an issue that's discussed both at the European level, at the national level, and at the institutional level, and even between faculty. Because, you know, a trend that's been going on for quite a while is that there's a need, for instance, for statistical purposes, to measure and count things. So my question to you is basically, and I hope that Carl Klingsheim here is going to enlighten us all about this in his presentation, from his position. Do we count what is easy to count, or what should be counted in terms of impact? Now, from where I'm standing, including the discussions we've had in this European stakeholder forum, I think there's a tendency that at least up until now, we have been counting mostly what's easy to count, and not so much what is the effect of the measures, the impact. Of course, this is a big discussion. There's no definite answer to this, but it's a very important issue. And it's definitely an issue where it's possible to have very different opinions and different viewpoints from where, depending on where you stand. So just to follow up on that point a bit further, back in 2008, and this I'm sure that many of you know, there was an expert group report called Metrics for Knowledge Transfer from PROS, and PROS are public research organizations. Public research organizations are basically universities and research institutes, right? And some others, but basically in Europe. And they came out, among other things, with recommended core performance indicators that I've put up here. Now, do you see something that's common to, or does something stand out here of these 6 indicators? When you look at them, something you recognize when you read them and look at them? Anybody? Okay. Oh, sorry. What did I do? Where is the pointer? That's there. Yeah, I got it. Isn't it on the side?
No, on the bit.
Where?
This one.
Oh yeah, that one. I'm not I'm not technological yet. I found it. Yeah, that one. It's not a big. It's license income earned. That's the only indicator that says something about return on investment, right? All the other points, research agreements, invention disclosures, patent applications, licenses executed, spin-offs established, that is on the investment side. That is on the input side. Now, what many people including people in the European Commission, would like to see is that they're more focused on the output side, on the effect side. And that's more difficult to measure. There was a mention here earlier on today. How many workplaces were created in a specific venture? You know. And this I'm certain that Carl is going to say something about, because this is actually an ongoing discussion on different levels. There's the need to sort of be able to justify investments in terms of outcome, in terms of return on investment. Okay, some of you might say, oh, wow, reduced youth employment in Europe, has that to do anything with knowledge transfer? Now, I'm not trying to step into the shoes of a politician here, but this is actually, in my opinion, that we are missing out on huge opportunities for knowledge transfer and value creation because of young people being unemployed. Now, at least in some countries, I don't know the status here in Estonia, but in some European countries, a substantial amount of those unemployed young people are students coming out of universities and university colleges without having anything to do, any job to go to. So, and remember then that these students are the carriers of the newest knowledge, presumably the best knowledge, right? They come out of top universities with the most recent knowledge, and they are not in a position to transfer this knowledge into companies or ventures. So that is actually missing out on huge opportunities. So I'm serious about this. If we can battle together youth unemployment in Europe, we would actually further knowledge transfer at a large scale. Because, and this is something I've heard, you know, as a counter-argument, it says, well, I mean, they can set up their own company, right? And we all like entrepreneurs. We like people to sort of be entrepreneurial. But this is my personal experience, is that being an entrepreneur is in many ways a lifestyle. So people are different, and not everybody have the sort of have it in them to be an entrepreneur. Some people are more happy being in a more sort of structured enterprise. So entrepreneurs is not for everybody. So you can't sort of say that, well, all the unemployed youth can put up their own companies. That doesn't work. Then they should have done it already, right? So there's a balance. There's so this is basically for policy. You know, policymakers should do something here because it would improve greatly uptake of new knowledge. I would like, before I end this is, I don't know, we know all about, you know, medical studies and dentist studies. We know that they have to learn to do the trade. They have to actually also gain the tacit knowledge, how to do things, you know, move their hands and stuff. If you are a surgeon, you would like the surgeon to be reasonably precise when he cuts you, right? So he has to have practice during his studies before it's actually let out on you, on us. Now, this is increasingly also becoming the case when it comes to engineering students and ICT students. You actually do some practice, some practical work as part of your study. So what that means is that, okay, you don't come out of a university only carrying theoretical knowledge. You actually come out carrying some practical knowledge as well, some tacit knowledge, you know how, and against know what facts. Yeah, I mean, I'm open for questions on the way. So if you'd like to ask a question, I'm fine with that.
It's actually no question, but you know, the point is, how about lifestyle versus self-actualization? I think youth is intended to follow self-actualization ambition because the lifestyle they maintain themselves already.
Well, that I can see that as a point of view. I have no fixed point of view on this. Besides that, I think there's a sort of a pool of knowledge to be exploited there. The thing is, the world today is so diversified, and young people are not alike. You know this, I mean, most likely from your family setting. I mean, I have 4 kids myself, 2 boys and 2 girls, and they are not, I mean, they're sort of very, very different people and make different priorities and have different opinions on different things, right? Even though they are where they have the same parents and the same genes. So this is a kind of a fact of life. You cannot, I mean, part of being youth is sort of making your own destiny, right? So this has to be accepted on some basic level. Yeah. Of course, I know this is a kind of political thing, but I firmly believe that if we could battle youth unemployment in Europe, we would in fact benefit the development of the economy in Europe greatly. Okay, anybody recognize that guy? I don't know too much about folk.
There is written Morten Øien.
Morten what?
Your name is written there.
Was it right? What I didn't say? Sorry. Oh yeah. You said that it's me. Okay. Now I don't know much about Estonian folklore and fairy tales, but in my country, Norway, there's a rich folklore, and a lot of the fairy tales that we read as kids are about trolls. Trolls are looking a bit like that. But when I was a kid, all the fairy tales were portraying the trolls in black and white, and they were uniformly bad guys, right? Really, sort of. There were no good guys among the trolls. There was a hero, of course, in all fairy tales there's a hero. In these fairy tales, he was called, or is called, Espen Askeladd. And he always won the battle with the trolls because, fortunately, even though the trolls were big and very strong, they were really stupid. So this hero guy, Espen, always managed to outsmart the trolls. Now, what I would like to talk to you about that is not folklore, that's part of the real world IP. I would like to talk about non-practicing entities, sometimes called patent trolls. What are these patent trolls? They are entities that keep patents, acquire patents with no intention of actually practicing the invention, to put it very simply. And those of you that have been following development in the United States over the years, and some of the political discussions also in the States when concerning patent law, are well aware of this issue. And it's become actually quite a big issue. I was involved in a shadow group that the Norwegian government set up back in 2010 when the government had decided to make an IPR white paper. The first time in history the Norwegian government wanted to make an IPR white paper, and they set up a shadow group to help them, and I was in that group, and this issue about non-practicing it came up. But the result, when the paper came in the spring of 2011, wasn't it, I think, Carl? Then they thought, well, this is the United States, it won't happen here. So my question to you is also this about practitioners, right? Have you had any experience with licensing to non-practicing entities, to trolls, or is this part of Estonian reality? But the thing is, I've been working in this field for so long that a lot of things that we think is just happening in the States, sooner or later it comes to us. Because that's where all the major developments in IP still comes from the US. So you notice the color. This is not in black and white because I think that in real world terms, you cannot portray non-practicing entities or patent trolls in a black and white fashion. There might be some benefits there as well. Then it's a balance about benefits and not so beneficial aspects. Now, I'm only a legal advisor at the university, and of course I'm not an expert in this, but let's look at one expert opinion on this. This is a quotation from an article that was published in February of this year by two really well-known and distinguished scholars in the US, Robin Feldman and Mark Lemley. And they had actually been looking into this on a scientific basis. And I'm not going to read this. I hope that you can read it yourself. But basically is that I could read the last sentence. Surprisingly, this is true not only of non-practicing entities licenses, but even of licensing from product-producing companies and universities. Our results cast significant doubt on one common justification for patent rights. So I hope to get some feedback on this from you in the form of questions. So you actually, you know, many things in life have pros and cons. So there might be something here that we need to look further into, both on a policy, you know, national level and on an institutional level. How do we actually interact here? We don't have too much information about that, Carl, do we? I asked the same question at home, and I said, do we have any experiences or do we have any facts here about this kind of interaction with non-practicing entities? And I didn't get much of answers back. So there's something to be followed up. Yeah, I don't have too much time left, do I? I'm supposed to finish at 15:15? Yeah, I'll do that. I'm through pretty soon. Now, what I'm trying to do here, I think you guessed it already, is to introduce some new perspectives on some fairly important issues. Elon Musk, you heard about him? Hands up, you heard about Elon Musk? Yeah, good. Now, Elon Musk is a visionary when it comes to technological development, in my view. I mean, a man who managed to make electric cars sexy deserves attention. We had some homemade electric cars in my country before this. They looked like a sort of badly made boat, Carl. they were extremely ugly. They didn't have sort of any sort of looking the nice kind of feel about it. The Tesla is, you know, all about the nice feel, and it's even high tech. It has a computer, you know, almost takes up the whole dashboard. So he stated some time ago that we believe that applying open source philosophy to our patents will strengthen rather than diminish Tesla's position in this regard. Okay, this remains of course to be seen, but it's interesting that somebody that's moved so quickly ahead in terms of technological development actually states this. And it ties on to, I think, what you said yesterday, Carl, is in some fields, like in the ICT area, you know, technological development is so fast that you know, it's outdated by the time you actually manage to get hold of a patent. So the competitive edge is actually being ahead of the field all the time, continuously reinventing yourself, basically. So you have a competitive edge in that you are the, you know, developing the best technology in your field. Yeah. It's also an American. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. Change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. I think if you look around, there's a lot of examples that this might actually be true. Look at Uber. There was this, you know, the taxi company concept that was discussed here early on. That came pretty quickly and immensely, really, really quickly, had enormous value. In 2013, I looked at an estimate of Uber, the value. I think it was a sort of up in the 160 billion or something like that. Last year was doubled in 1 year. They doubled their value in dollars, billions of dollars. So 3 examples I think it's worth like sort of looking into when it comes to sort of creating new business models. Tesla is, of course, one example. Then we have something that's Finnish, and I'm very proud to say that next week I'm going to Tampere, where this invention actually came from back in 2008. It's a co-creation concept. It was promoted in the beginning by people from the industry. People from Nokia was initiating this. So they had a need. They went to universities, the University of Tampere, and said, we like to put up a new model of how to collaborate with students. So they came out with a co-creation model where you establish international teams of students, faculty, and make things for industry. Now, there are 3 reasons I think why Demula has been successful. They did it, it was demand-driven. It is based on a solid IP platform. And they went international from day one. So now you can find Demula centers all over the world. I talked to Ville Kairamo, who's my friend. He was actually in the same expert group as me. That's where I met him. some weeks back, and then it'd been in South Africa, and the South African government had decided to put up 3 demo centers. I sit in another European group with a guy from Mexico, and they have a demo center in Mexico. Look up Demolo. I really recommend it. Then we have something at a much smaller scale, but I'd like to mention that as well. It's called DIGS. It's innovation platform and a common working space for new innovative companies that's been established in Trondheim, in the middle of the city center. And I've been there. I talked to some of those people working in spin-outs there, and it's a really sort of dynamic thing. And they have a motto, I think, meet, work, mix and fix is their motto. Meet, work, mix and fix. So they have a restaurant where you can come in as just from the street and talk to the people. And they have and down in the cellar they have a cooperation with something called Makersphere. They have a 3D printer there. It's a really sort of buzz place. Things are happening all the time. Yeah, this is a picture of a famous Norwegian painting, painted by an artist called Teadustöö. You see something, now I know where it is. You see that shining thing there? That's the golden Soria Moria castle. And in this very, very famous folktale, because this is as a picture as a scene in the folktale, Espen, who's standing there, the normal interpretation of this is that Espen is looking at the golden castle, the promised land where he's going to, right? So what if we interpret this picture in another fashion? What if what the artist meant to depict here was actually Soria Moria Castle is where Espen is coming from. And he's having one last look and is at his paradise lost. Then, that's my final message to you. Thank you.
So, questions? I saw Erik, did you raise the hand in the middle? You wanted to? No.
Yeah, okay. I'm open for questions.
Questions.
Yes,
yes,
please. Just want some water.
So.
I know I raised some sort of very big issues here, but there's a lot of nitty-gritty under each of these points. So please, I would be very happy if you have some questions.
Okay, but let's then think about it. But what can any of us do in that sense to change or to make your visions reality in that sense that from the grassroots level?
No, I think I think everyone. This is on a very personal level because innovation comes from persons, people. People, all great things, it's basically about people. when you get down to it. So if you are able to change your perspective. Perhaps look at what you're doing and from a different angle. It might actually help being abroad, looking at what you do at home. You might see some new aspects that will actually improve your chances of succeeding in what you do, both in the academic world and in business. So having different perspective on what is the normal perspective is actually something that might bring you to the next level. I've seen it happen with people that I've been working closely with. So there are some, and talking about this sort of business models, we have now at my university in Trondheim, we have some really, really exciting research going on creating new business models, coming up with really sort of radical new business models. Perhaps Carl is going to expand on that. Thank you very much.
But with regard to what we are saying with regard to university, there was a talk in the panel before that people should be doing their stuff, what they're good at. So it's a personal endeavor. Business students, engineering students. What's the best way to get them together?
Yeah, that's a big question. Because there are so many. I mean, one thing I hope that you do in Estonia, you are 1.4 million people, and you have 6 universities. Of course, there's something about critical mass here, but it's also a matter of trying out different kind of models, trying out different kind of collaboration models within your own country. Not sort of going for the one thing that you think is the best practice example, because this has to come from the bottom. You have to basically create some kind of innovation community on a sort of broad basis, and then you will figure out things under the way. So there's a push and there's a pull, and there has to be a balance between them. So it's I mean, sometimes you don't really know what you're good at before you've tested it on other people, right? Yeah.
Morten. Hello?
Yeah.
I was actually intrigued a bit about your slide where you told that we need to do something about the youth unemployment.
Yeah.
And you gave a message that basically most of the people usually are not entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's my
That's
experience.
true, yes.
It's only
I'm
a small
coming,
percentage.
I'm coming also from, so to say, the scientific family. My wife is a scientist. I'm having also some degree, but well, I know what my wife is doing. She's doing already 10 years all the time the same movements, and I see all the time all the very important articles that are coming. From the other side, I'm the entrepreneur, and during those 10 years, I created 5 companies, sold 4. One is very goodly, very well developed, and working closely with scientific institutes. Yeah. So my question is, do we really need to encourage the young people to think more that somewhere, somehow, someone will give us all the needed living sources? Or we rather will teach them immediately to think that rather create your company, let them go bust, let them go bankrupted, create a new one, and make the very good scientific research based on that.
It's very interesting what you're saying. What I think is, I mean, we're talking about sort of differences here in the panel between universities and companies. Now, if you look at the university world globally today, I mean, universities are as differentiated than companies. So, you know, sometimes you wonder if the name university is the only common denominator. So what I think we should do, at least at my university, is try out new models of education and be open for setting, you know, new groups together. Basically making more options for the young students to look into. Because I'm convinced there's not one model that works for all. So you have to, and then you would actually have sort of natural selection, you know, those that has some kind of entrepreneurial gene or an interest, they would, you know, go into those groups and interact in those groups. So that is so to try out different, but try it out also at an earlier stage. I had a professor at the university I talked to before the summer holiday. He said, why should we wait with all this practical stuff till the end of the studies? Is there a law against actually doing practical stuff in the first year? You know, so we need to try out some new models. And then I think things sorts it out by itself anyway. You know, that's at least what my experience from my kids. You know, you have to let them sort of have these opportunities. You can point at some opportunities, but basically it comes back to their own choices, and they have to find their own way. It's possibly not a good answer, but this is the kind of, I'm only talking from experience from what I've been seeing, also as part of the university. Yeah, no more.
Well,
thank you.
Many thanks.
Thank you.